What is a substitute sense of self? In the last video, we've gone over what a sense of self is and what a lack of sense of self is, and you understand that it is a core feature of a person that should develop in childhood, and if it doesn't, it's because the child's relationship with their parents or caregivers is not healthy. We also discussed this developmental process called mirroring. It could be adequate or inadequate. What does inadequate mirroring look like in real life? I can give you an example from my own life. When I was 3, my parents got divorced. My mother was pregnant during that time and emotionally devastated. My father was gone, just gone. And as the young child that I was, I had no idea what all took place in my parents' lives. I only noticed that my father was gone and my mother would cry all the time. She was so depressed and withdrawn that it was like I had lost both of my parents. My mother hardly ever smiled and she wouldn't play with me. She would also say mean things about my dad, like that he didn't love us and wasn't ever coming home. Then my little brother was born and my mom slipped even further away from me because she was taking care of him. I felt abandoned, alone, invisible. I felt like I didn't make a difference in the world, like I didn't exist. I felt what we, a healthy sense of self, call annihilation. And that is when I discovered a key survival tactic used by people who lack a sense of self. I found a way to make myself feel better through getting my mother's approval. I would do things to get my mom's attention and try to make her smile. I would perform in whatever way I needed to get her to notice me. From singing to dancing or helping tidy up. I'm pretty sure, "Look at me, Mom," were probably my first words. When she noticed me and smiled and paid attention to me, I felt like I was winning, that I was good at something. I would feel good about myself and like I had value and purpose. But approval is always momentary and ephemeral by nature. That is how the need to feel good became compulsive. When I wasn't getting approval, I felt like I wasn't good enough to be of value. I wasn't good enough to pay attention to. I wasn't good enough for my father to come home. I wasn't good enough for my mother to spend time with me or play with me. Does this resonate with you at all? Did you grow up feeling like you weren't good enough? Do you sometimes feel sorry for being who you are and not being what your parents wish you were or what you think you should be? There are lots of ways that this symptom can control your life. When you begin living your life to please others, you never feel whole and fulfilled. So let me summarize. The need to gain approval is a survival strategy and gives people who lack a sense of self an artificial sense of self, a false sense of self, if you will, because if you're a person with a substitute sense of self, you're really not in touch with your real self, but with the things you need to do to feel good about yourself. The moment you get the approval needed to feel good about yourself, you have the illusion that you are allowed to be and that everything is okay and that you're close to a normal person. To gain this substitute sense of self becomes your goal in life, and it's a false sense of purpose. The need to gain a substitute sense of self forms in children who lack a sense of independent existence because their caregivers related to them as an extension of themselves or as a means to an end. Because their parents were unable to see them as their own independent person, the child's substitute sense of self wants to attain the approval and acceptance of the parent or the person in authority. The need for approval becomes compulsive because the child needs it in order to feel worthy of existing. Without it, there's annihilation, which is a sense of not existing, being bodily there but not seen and not heard by others, not having value. So, join me in my next video about inadequate mirroring and the internalized parental voice.